my task and my problem I'm working on is, of course, Russian narratives and Russian-led narratives, and that's why it would be interesting to discuss against Vidmante's presentation about pro-Russian propaganda. What is pro-Russian propaganda? Because I think the large problem or the substantial problem in our policy making and policy decision making process is the lack of clear understanding what we are talking about. Because it's very easy to talk about narratives and take whatever narrative it's easy at that time. On Monday we take one narrative, on Tuesday second batch of them, on Wednesday another one, others, etc., etc. And no possibility to compare, no possibility to identify similarities, to identify characteristics which compare and are repeated. Because from my point of view, and that's my work on the research area, is that narratives are no different from other weapons, other tools. And from that perspective, when we look into narratives, it's very essential to understand. That's 5 millimeters, that's 10 milliliters, that's 9 millimeters, that's the author, that's the target, etc., etc. Because otherwise, we fail in systematization and we fail in countering narratives. But that's my preconditions and ideas for the start. But let's start with a problem. The problem is that I shortly introduced. We don't have any unique and systemic approach towards information warfare. When we don't have unique understanding of narratives, we are not in the position to systematically approach and counter information warfare. To start with, I start with a simple method, and that's exploratory research, and I'm focusing on literature review. My task was to identify as many as possibly available in the public area, in academic literature, not in a public, not in a social service, not in a popular literature, but in the academic studies, what narratives we are talking about. And after this, maybe in the future, I will add up further areas as social service, as popular studies, studies, etc., etc. But for the time being, for this particular research, for this particular paper presentation, I do literature review. And before doing this, I start with a paradigm of a narrative, and I work with two authors, Mr. Chapman and Mr. Jeanette. Both of them are quite substantially established in the field, 50 plus years in production. So, and I look into narratives as a structural thing, not as something flexible or unidentifiable. Vice versa, I look into very specific characteristics, story and discourse, events, existence, actions, happenings, character settings, structure, manifestation, etc., etc. This structure, I take it from Mr. Chapman, helps me to analyze and take specific characteristic from whatever narratives we are talking about. After doing this, I'm in place when I can identify unique narratives or repeating narratives. I'm in position to say some ideas are verified, some of these are not verifiable, therefore should be taken out. And that's, from my point of view, is a scientific approach to information analysis and scientific approach to information warfare, which is not very frequent as a matter of fact. So, initial data source, I'm in the process of finishing the final version, but approximately I have 20 plus sources, academic sources. You will see major Lithuanian names, major international authors who were dealing with narratives about Lithuania coming from Russian sources, because my topic is Russian-led narratives, and that's why a different approach, not total approach which we could relate to Russia, but really identify and join towards authorship, towards the disseminator factor as Kremlin or Kremlin-related entities. I will not dig deep at this stage into various sources, but mostly all of them dig into 2, 3, several narratives. They are not covering all the field. And that's where I think the novelty of my research is that I try to compare, identify unique narratives, and try to build a taxonomy, which could be a general approach taxonomy towards narratology of Russia against Lithuania. Preliminary results, what I have after initial data source analysis. Actually, I have 3 meta-narratives. One is Lithuania as a failed state, Great Russia mythology, and blame shifting to Lithuania. All of these are related or coming from Russia to Lithuania relationship in different aspects. Of course, I have a special other meta-narrative, which is coming from practical approach that some ideas are intermixing or uniting several ideas. So let's get deeper into the subject. When we have the first meta-narrative, Lithuania is a failed state, we see 5 narratives which I try to unique. And you see I identify a core claim, I identify key characteristics, try to identify or specify primary dissemination techniques, and of course again major sources. These narratives or these clusters of narratives are being dealt with. Let's go step by step into the narratives. The delegitimization of a statehood is identified by the idea, and you can see it's very early one, firstly identified by Mr. L.Ulevičius in 2015, and it's very general. Lithuania is a weak, failed, or externally controlled state. I would say it's more or less the general narrative covering mostly various parts of later one. Historical revisionism is more directly focused on some specific historical issues. It might be, for example, collectivization, farm, agricultural reforms, etc., etc. Western puppetry is very, again, directly related to Lithuania obeying to NATO, to European Union, to US commandments. And that's the idea that, again, Lithuania is a failed state. The Kremlin is declaring that Lithuania has no internal independence, and it's just a puppet. We are just providing solutions, implementing decisions we are asked by some owners. Internal collapse is, again, it's interesting that later such a narrative is less identifiable. It was in the initial state after our after Lithuania joining the European Union, and after kind of exodus of Lithuanian people to European Union countries. The narrative was oriented towards as everybody is leaving, the society is corrupt, some elites are managing to get all the financial sources, and others are very, very disloyal to the country. Democratic incompetence, it's usually during the conflict periods, and it's of course especially to Ukraine, to some other COVID-19 pandemic was one of the case when the autocratic regimes were portrayed as somehow better responding to serious situations versus to democratic society mechanisms which were too weak, too free for the society. The second meta-narrative is Great Russia, and of course it's Russia itself has an obligation to portray Russia as a very potent country, but in comparing to Lithuania and comparing to the impact made to Lithuanian society, Kremlin tries to build a Russophobic narrative, which is again very, very early up to the latest. We see various implementations by the same narrative. We see that Lithuania is behaving incorrectly, incompetently, and of course with stereotypic anti-Russian perspective. Russian world narrative is mostly oriented towards Russian-speaking population, or those members, those citizens of Lithuanian society, which are still in some kind of relationship to Russian culture. Of course, that means ethnic minority speaking Russians, and those elder Lithuanian citizens who still can speak Russian, can read and write. And the third group of narratives, blame shifting. Again, the idea here is in comparing to failed state, we don't have a clear representation of the Russian state, whereas blame shifting narratives, they have always both countries kind of comparison characteristic. Russia is always here, and we have a real problem. For example, some kind of rights, some kind of dialogue, some kind of security issues, anti-resistance, etc. Russia is here, but Kremlin positioning and storytelling efforts, they are oriented towards shifting the blame. All these issues, all these problems, they are portrayed as coming from miscompetence or incompetence of Lithuanian government, of Lithuanian rulers, and vice versa. Kremlin is very good, open for dialogue, open for negotiations. So in this case, you can see that this blame shifting opportunities or blame shifting characterization, it started somewhere in 2017, 2019. It's a bit later development in narrative or storytelling from the Kremlin side. So that's the third group of the meta narrative, and the final view. At the moment, that's my temporary draft version of a potential taxonomy, keeping in mind 3 meta-narratives and 12 or 11 specific stories which are being told by the Russian entities. And again, I will repeat myself. Here I am talking about narratives which are originating and are being disseminated by Russian government or directly controlled entities. I'm not talking here about the narratives which are, for example, disseminated by Lithuanian actors, which are not the same op TV, for example. I'm not talking about them because from my position, from my research, it's not Russian-led narrative. It's a bit different area for the research. And conclusions, again, draft versions. So literature review provided a lengthy list of scientifically confirmed and verified narratives. The structure provided by Mr. Chapman and Jeanette provided opportunity to verify and group them into 3 meta-narratives. And of course, the proposed taxonomy is a first step in the research and further clarification efforts. So that's it. Thank you for your attention, and I'm open for your questions.